Oh my God, am I really doing a video about the big scary H? Well, seems to be a topic on a lot of people's minds in various ways in various places. It's certainly a topic I find to be very interesting. Yeah, the Holocaust narrative, it's talked about a lot. I had never come across people that kind of mocked it or were revisionists or anything like that until recently. But yeah, you have the people that mock it because they think it's talked about way too much. It's forced down people's throats. So it's kind of either people are forcing it down people's throats too much, or the people complaining about having it forced down their throats too much are just kind of big whiny crybabies. I think it's more of the latter, personally, because while it is featured in a lot of places, you know, there's a lot of Netflix videos about it. There's a lot of whining done by the media and SJWs. Embracing the Holocaust narrative. Often it's a stretch, or it's a ridiculous stretch. But I don't think that necessitates the reaction of, oh, we're just being oppressed by this narrative and we can't get away from it. I think it takes away from the interesting history of the event, the lessons and implications that can have, because it's not just this black and white narrative that can be used in one way. It's really a dynamic event that can be analyzed a variety of ways. So I think people that are threatened by it, so to say, are just thinking about it one-dimensionally, are just not very fluidly. I guess the people that object to it think this is a Jewish sympathy story to gain sympathy for the Jews, and it's a blood libel against white people, and it can certainly be used that way. But like I'm saying, I think that's just kind of a stupid narrative. I mean, part of the argument is, was the Holocaust this event that was so much worse than other events? And I think this is maybe a trap, because I don't think you're supposed to compare. I don't think this is, like ESPN, and we're going to rank the worst genocides that have ever happened, and, what's going to come out on top. Is it going to be the Holocaust, or is it going to be the communist genocides? And I think that really cheapens what you take away from the history and such events. Luke Ford said on his show, rightly so, like every genocide is unique. Every event is unique. And that's really true. But I don't think the attention the Holocaust gets is unwarranted. But I can still say that, yes, it's misapplied, and people do try to use it as a cudgel for their political arguments. For example, we saw recently the Holocaust being invoked for the refugee camps on the border. Yeah, and there are parallels you could make there, because there were refugees and camps involved in the Holocaust. I definitely think that's, at the end of the day, a ridiculous comparison. But it doesn't mean the event itself is, something that you can't learn from and shouldn't be considered, and not something that you should be threatened by. I mean, I think what makes the Holocaust unique is, as far as genocides go, it was, the most meticulous, the most well thought out and orchestrated genocide that I'm aware of. It wasn't, like an outbreak of violence. It was much less of, kind of utilitarian than other genocides. I had always thought that the speeches about the Jews that the Nazis made, that Hitler made about the extermination of the Jews, I thought that was kind of for political purposes, for rabble rousing. But I think the more you get to know the thought process of the Third Reich and what their fears were, that they really meant it. So I read a book recently by Peter Longerich, who is one of the famed Holocaust historians. He's German. He actually testified for the defense in the Irving trial, so he's pretty well known. And he helped establish this fact that the Nazis did really have a fear of the Jews. It wasn't just something that they utilized for political purposes, although they did that too. Because the Holocaust really is unfathomable. How did this happen? How did they feel all of these civilians and children were really a threat? It seems unfathomable to us now, but you can see how this is real to the Third Reich. So I think what makes the Holocaust unique is how meticulously planned, how methodical it was, how orchestrated it was, how kind of against, like I'm saying, most of the other genocides didn't have to be as orchestrated because they came naturally, kind of. Why did Stalin subdue the Ukraine? Because he wanted to establish rule there, and he did that by starving it into submission. The Turks in the Armenian genocide had seemingly more logical reasons for why they conducted it. But why you would ship Jews from France 500 miles or whatever it is to Poland, or from Italy to Poland, or why would you convince countries that you don't even have control over, like Hungary? It's certainly much less clear. So to me, it's unique in that respect of being of more difficult and having to be more heavily orchestrated and manipulated to occur. It occurred less naturally, if that makes sense. But I also think the Holocaust is unique in its applicability of it being so orchestrated, happening in more modern times. Of any genocide, it seems to go through more steps, more distinct, direct steps that eventually led to the mass slaughter. Because there was a lot of resistance in many areas. So, how did it start? It started through propaganda, the delegitimization, and the delegitimization and demonization of the Jews. And for such an event to happen again, a government or entity would have to go through the same steps. And you can see this happening today in some ways. So not to say every event is unique, but they also have certain parallels. So I would say the most heavily demonized people in Western society is Europeans, white people, So we can see the demonization occurring in the media, on social media, in movies. And if such a horrible event were to take place again, it would go through the same direct steps. Either, exactly the same or kind of with a twist. So this is why I think, all these white nationalists that try to deny that the Holocaust happened or make fun of it. I think a lot of this is done out of a reaction to kind of the religiosity of the Holocaust, or Holocaustianity as it's called. I think this is just a kind of a trolly way to go against mainstream discourse. It's kind of done without thinking of the implications of doing that, or Mike Enoch's strategy of BTFOing the Holocaust. We're going to BTFO the Holocaust, and this is the first step to getting rid of this narrative that's being used against white people. Without thinking critically, that might make sense, but I think it's stupid because David Irving tried to BTFO the Holocaust, and while he got a lot of attention and generated a lot of outrage, it ended up being more solidified than before. I know it kind of emboldened the revisionists, like the hardcore revisionists, but I think he solidified the Holocaust narrative much more so than before. So, but I don't think Mike Enoch is really trying to, I don't think he has really the best interests of white people at heart. I don't think he's a real white advocate. I personally think he's doing it for the outrage and the clicks and the super chats and the attention. Just because the shit he says is so over the top. It's just the only way you can explain it in my book. But I've said this before, if white people think they're being disrespected and delegitimized and demonized, they should invoke the Holocaust as opposed to trying to, quote, BTFO it and try to say that, gas chambers didn't exist and blah, 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 which makes you a freak in the eyes of, 95% of people. To me, this makes much more sense. And actually, I'm not sure it would generate more outrage amongst the left. It would still generate outrage. And actually, it would flip the tables on them more. Because they would say, oh my God, white racists invoking the Holocaust for their own arguments and purposes. This is just completely unacceptable. But to me, that argument flows much more naturally. If you think you're being delegitimized and your culture's being unwound, you would invoke the best example of that happening that you have available, which is the Holocaust. It's the best example of a people being delegitimized, demonized, cut off from society that you have. So I think you would point to this example and say, look what they did to the Jews in the 1930s, you know. They delegitimized them, they demonized them, they tried to discredit their culture and blame them for all society's problems. And this is what's being done to us now, you know. That is bullshit, man. It's at least an idea worth thinking about. But people just have such an emotional knee-jerk reaction to the Holocaust. I think they don't think about it enough and see what it has to offer. You know, I find the history of it to be extremely interesting, and there's a lot to read about it, and it's just mind-boggling, all the different aspects of it and all the different countries that it happened in. And people shouldn't have such ridiculous knee-jerk emotional reactions to it and read into it more. Yeah, I know some of it's cheesy. You got movies like The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, but to me it becomes part of the overall event. You know, like, yeah, not everything about it is good. Some of it's cringe. You got stupid movies and SJWs that implicate it in stupid ways. Propaganda about it that's ridiculous and stupid. And you got Holocaust denialists that make for big trials like the Irving trial or the Zendel trial. I mean, it's all really fascinating to me. And the fact that people get outraged about it on both sides only makes it more interesting. So, I don't know. I think there's a proper and an improper way to view the Holocaust, you know. What's the proper context of it? I don't think there's one right answer. I think some are more right than others, and some are more ridiculous than others. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. So, all right, I got through a video on the Big H. That's big.